Welcome back, everybody, to the show. It's episode 121 of the Below Average Joe's MMA podcast. It's Friday. That means, per usual, we're here to give you guys the MMA Weekend Preview. And really, it's going to be centered mostly around the UFC this weekend. UFC taking full advantage of the conglomerate they have turned themselves into. They are basically competing against themselves this weekend. That's it. Just them. It's me, myself, and I, as the UFC would say right now. Next week will be different. We'll worry about that when we get to it. It's a big card, too. We typically get excited about even the smallest
of cards.
The smallest fights still, we find a way to get excited about them. But there's no trouble getting excited for this one. Sure, we're not paying $70 for it, but it feels like we should be. I honestly feel like we're robbing the company blind.
We're getting spoiled this weekend.
Yeah. Now, Dominic, I have to update the viewers on something that we've talked about previously on this podcast. Something that not only do these fights excite you this weekend, but you know what else excites you is the fact that the Salih family pool is now, and your words,
in my words,
95% complete.
Yes.
As you guys are full on swimming in it, you sent me a video saying 95% complete.
Yes.
So how does it feel?
It feels good, man. I mean, it's been a beautiful week, so there's been a lot of work done to it, and we are able to get into the water. It's getting treated and cleaned out, all the fun stuff. I say 95% because we got to get the fence up, got to get the concrete cleaned off, some of that stuff. But for the most part, it's done. I did a huge cannonball last night just to, break it in. It was pretty fun until my ears popped like crazy, but nevertheless, it was a great time. Can't wait to have all the bros over. My half of the Below Average Joe's over. But until then, I guess I got to swim by myself. It's fine, though. Noah, how are you doing, my friend, as we get this weekend started?
Oh, I feel great. You want to know why? Because we crowned the new NBA champion a couple days ago. The Milwaukee Bucks have been crowned NBA champions, and now you guys look and you go, aren't you from Ohio? Yeah, I'm not a Milwaukee Bucks fan. But, and I think Dominic can attest to this, I am the longest-standing Yanez Antetokounmpo fan in history.
Yes.
I've been literally on this guy's hype train from day one. I saw the potential before anyone else did. That's not true. But I am a big fan of him. I've been a fan of his for a long time. Something about the fact that he is 6'11", and he has the skill set of sometimes a point guard. And I've always found that very intriguing. Now, I put this on Twitter and on my personal Twitter, which you guys can follow at Into
Shameless plug.
But I put on there that for anybody that I played on NBA 2K16 through 19, this and my co-host here is a prime candidate for this.
Yes.
I said this shouldn't come as a surprise that the Milwaukee Bucks won the title. And that's because I was clapping cheeks on 2K for 4 years with this team.
This is true.
And Dominic, you were a big victim at that time. You tried to use your Clipper teams that just never could get the job done.
No. No one would put Yanez in at point guard, and it was over. That was it.
Called timeout, and you're like, oh, shit. Here we go.
The kid from The Simpsons, I'm in danger. That was me. Anytime Noah would call that timeout and make that adjustment.
Oh, man. Yeah, so I was having fun. Literally every person that liked that tweet was the people that I victimized in that game. Oh, man. Yeah, that was a time. I'll tell you what, people. I'm not much of a gamer anymore. I don't own any video games. I don't own any stations anymore. Dominic is a big gamer. Yeah, what a nerd. Am I right? No, I'm just kidding. But I'm not. I've kind of just, I'm sure eventually I'll buy a PS5 or something. But for now, I do not have any. However, because of that, I never really was all that competitive in video games. I've always been more of a sports gamer.
Yeah.
Loved 2K, Madden, MLB The Show.
Your dynasty modes, your franchise
I love my franchise modes. You know that. But I never got into like the first-person shooters very much or the open world adventures or whatever. And somehow, I wasn't even very competitive with video games, but somehow, some way, with 2K, I found the recipe.
This dude was a different animal.
Literally the Milwaukee Bucks, and I just put Yanez at point guard, and all of a sudden it was game over.
Yeah.
I was never competitive with them, but after that, I was like, oh, I might have a future in this.
The 2K league.
Yeah. But I was very happy to see my man Yanez get his first ring. Put a 50-piece up on the Phoenix Suns, and the next day ordered a 50-piece in the Chick-fil-A drive-thru.
It's a hell of a meal.
So I think that's a good way to transition into what you all actually came here to listen to.
Yeah.
And that's fight talk. And we start with our fight announcements, but they ain't no fights being announced.
No, that's true.
These are just fights being moved around. We start with an unfortunate one, our co-main event for Bellator 263, happening a week from Saturday. Magomedov versus Rafael Stotts. It looked like it's going to be a title eliminator.
Yep.
Winner probably getting the next shot for Sergio Pettis' bantamweight title. Unfortunately, that bout is off. I don't know who the injury was suffered by, but I believe it was an injury that caused this bout to be taken off. The signs seem to point that it might have been Magomedov, because I know there was Stotts was putting videos of him running on a track just a day or two before this announcement. So, I mean, not saying it still couldn't be him, but that's just where my mind went when I saw it.
Right.
Regardless, doesn't matter. Just hope for a recovery for whoever it is, and hopefully we still get to see that bout at some point in 2021. I definitely want to see it in the fall at some point, because we need to get Sergio, his next guy, up, and hopefully they can have their bout beginning of 2022 maybe.
For sure.
So that's all I hope for there. Any thoughts on that one?
Just, again, unfortunate. Hopefully, whoever it was that got injured, hopefully it's a quick recovery, get that fight rebooked as soon as possible. That was a fantastic co-main to go alongside the Pitbull and McKee fight, but that's all right. Hopefully we'll get it by the end of the year, as Noah says, get a next title challenger for Sergio Pettis.
The only other thing here for fight announcements is actually a bout that we were going to talk about today in the rest part of the show. It's been pushed back a week. That is number 7 ranked heavyweight Shamil Abdur-Rahimov going up against number 10 Chris Daukaus. That's been pushed back to July 31st as well, for good reason. This card doesn't really need this fight. This fight was
it's stacked.
It was deep into the prelims. And you would think,
yeah.
So just to be clear, you would think that because of that, that's the reason they're pushing it back, is because these are 2 top 10 heavyweights. So you would put them in a more prominent position on a weaker card on that July 31st card.
Yeah.
That's not the case, though. They're basically in the same spot.
They're literally buried on the prelims.
Still buried on the prelims. So I don't really understand it. But personally, selfishly, for our show,
it gives us another fight to talk about.
because that's a fight that I do want to talk about. And, look, just a heads up, that July 31st UFC card is
we may only discuss 2 fights on the whole card.
Anyways, moving on from the fight announcements. We're going to really, all the news today is UFC centered, and all of it's also centered around a very popular application that we all use. that Bluebird, that damn Bluebird Twitter.
The tweeter.
Yeah, starting with Gilbert Burns.
My goodness.
He had a big win at UFC 264 over Stephen Thompson. But we all kind of knew that in that fight, it felt like Stephen Thompson was the one that had more to gain from a win there. Gilbert Burns more just trying to keep his name in the top. In the conversation. But you got some of these other guys that are looking like they're ahead of him right now for potential title shots. Colby Covington, Leon Edwards even. But he's doing his damnedest right now to try to get his name out there even more, because he has been going off on Twitter.
I love it. I respect it.
I do respect it. So it started with probably the stuff that it's more harmless, just tweeting Leon ? With a couple eye emojis. Jorge ? Couple eye emojis. Nate, calling out Nate Diaz. He's done that in the past. And then he decided to just kind of focus in on Nate Diaz. A lot of this is because Nate Diaz has taken public shots at Gilbert in the past, like when Gilbert Burns was originally scheduled to face Kamaru Usman at UFC 251. And at the time, everybody kind of thought Jorge Masvidal should have been the one in that spot, but a lot of fans thought he got passed over for Gilbert because Gilbert might have been able to take a pay cut compared to what Jorge was probably wanting to fight for. Nate Diaz took shots at him for that, saying, I don't remember the verbiage being used, but it wasn't very nice, just saying that this guy he'll take fights for scraps and us real fighters have to pay the consequences of not being able to get our fights or whatever, it's just one of those type of arguments. So Gilbert just proceeds. I can't even go into all of it. I mean, he just proceeds to take so many shots at Nate Diaz over the course of the last 48 hours. I mean, I don't even have any that I can just read off because it's literally if you go to his Twitter account, that's all he's tweeted about for the last 48 hours. My question here for you, Dom. Now we know Gilbert Burns is obviously does all of this is his reason, his focus here is to get back into that title contention.
Yeah.
Does a fight with a guy like Nate Diaz do? I know it probably doesn't in your eyes, but does a fight with a guy like Nate Diaz do more for him than a fight with someone like Leon Edwards or Jorge Masvidal? Or is him kind of going after and targeting Nate Diaz so much? Does it feel like maybe he should focus more on those actual top welterweight contenders right now?
Really, if you're Gilbert, I love it because he's just going after everybody. And for Nate specifically, in terms of getting him closer to a title shot, no, because we probably think still he needs 2 more wins anyways, should Usman stay as champion. And the good news is if Burns were to get a fight against Diaz, he's going to get the biggest paycheck of his life. He's going to get the biggest rub of his life where people can see him and more spotlight shined on him. So I don't hate on it at all. In terms of closer to a title shot, I mean, maybe, just maybe. But, I mean, Leon just beat him, and he's truthfully nowhere closer, and he's on a 10-fight unbeaten streak. So, but to get your name out there if you go with Burns, I respect it. I love it, along with the Colby call-outs, the Leon call-outs. I mean, Jorge, he's going after everybody that he hasn't fought yet, and I respect it, man. I mean, he's a great fighter at the end of the day, super well-rounded, a dangerous matchup for all of them. So, and I got to say, by the way, Diaz, his only sub-tweet, is that even still a thing anymore, sub-tweeting people? He tweeted, I guess, in response to this, I just want to fight the guy that already knocked all you fools out, speaking about Usman knocking out Jorge and Gilbert Burns. So just Nate being Nate, trying to earn a title fight. What's the surprise there?
It's Diaz being Diaz, man. I mean, you can't blame the guy for wanting to fight the best.
And people love it. I mean,
yeah. I mean, if the UFC booked it, if they legitimately booked it right now, that's a different story. I mean, I don't really see how you can, what's the word? How can you justify that?
Yeah.
Giving a guy a title shot. I don't think that's in the discussion here. I mean, we've seen some out there title challengers be announced. Dan Henderson when he fought Michael Bisping and he was ranked 14th, but at least he was coming off a win.
Yeah.
Probably a couple wins at that time. Diaz not being, there's no way. But obviously Usman and Nate have shared their words. Even Kamaru's manager has been doing a lot his work trying to kind of get that fight, at least plug it a little bit, maybe kind of sprinkle some hints out there for a potential future fight in case Nate's able to get a bounce back win or something. Regardless, I will say
Burns and Nate is a fun fight though, stylistically.
I agree, because I think they're both dogs that are going to get in there and get in each other's face and take the fight to one another. Sure, Gilbert also is the type of guy that knows where his talents lie in a fight. He saw it in the Stephen Thompson fight. Not style, not the most exciting fight in the world, but I think in a fight with Nate Diaz, where is Gilbert's clear advantage? I mean, maybe.
And can you hold Nate down?
Sure. Is his jiu-jitsu probably better than Nate Diaz? Probably. Is his striking better than Nate Diaz? Maybe. I don't. It's all kind of nil. I feel like their skills kind of reflect each other.
Yeah.
And it's more going to be can Nate withstand the power of Gilbert? While can Gilbert really withstand the volume of Diaz.
Yeah.
I think it is a very interesting fight. Honestly, probably one of the better matchups for Diaz in that kind of top 5 at welterweight, if I'm being honest. Not a disrespect to Gilbert, just more so how the matchups work out, that I think their skill sets really align with one another. So Diaz wouldn't necessarily be out of that fight. But I don't know. I like what Gilbert's doing right now. I honestly think it's a little annoying or aggravating to me that he's kind of been thrust out of this conversation to begin with. The fact that, I mean, if you're talking about wanting to see Usman do these rematches, I understand Gilbert shouldn't get a rematch right now. Colby Covington, I think, is a good next fight for him. Leon Edwards should be up there in the discussion. However, Gilbert was very close to winning that fight in round 1.
I think people forget.
People don't want to accept that. They want to pretend like that almost didn't happen, or that Kamaru wasn't as hurt as he appeared. But that is what happened. It's just Kamaru was able to come back, make the adjustments, and put the beating on Gilbert in the rounds 2 and 3. But round 1, man, that was very close.
Mm-hmm.
So I think, not saying that a second fight would go Gilbert's way, but I think we're overlooking him at this point. So I'm glad to see that he's at least being vocal.
Yeah, get your name out there at the end of the day.
Yeah. And this tweeter talk is not going to stop here, because that's the big thing, focus with our next news story here. But this is in the lightweight division. Justin Gaethje and Michael Chandler. Justin Gaethje, been a guy that's been basically radio silent since he lost in his title fight with Khabib Nurmagomedov back in October of 2020, while Michael Chandler has kind of been silent since he lost his title fight with Charles Oliveira. Now they both have decided to be kind of take shots at one another on Twitter. And I'm just going to read them off because unlike Gilbert's Twitter feed, this is one tweet each. So it's a lot easier to get out there. So Michael Chandler, this was actually on an Instagram live. Sorry, not a tweet. He said, "I've said Justin Gaethje's name no less than 100 times since I've signed with the organization. He's been asked to fight me 3 or 4 different times. Every time he's declined. He and I are ranked 2 spots away from each other. He has not fought since last October. He needs to get a fight in if he thinks he's going to fight for the title. For some reason, him and his camp have no interest in fighting me." And then Gaethje took to Twitter to respond and said, "Mike Chandler is talking out of his ass. I was waiting for the bout agreement 3 weeks into camp and wake up to news his daddy, Dana, gave him the shot. He's been out of commission since the KO. What am I missing? I'm on vacay and this fucker is slandering my name 3 to 4 times, ? So things are heating up here.
Gaethje's not the guy you want to make angry, if you ask me.
No, and Michael Chandler seems like such a respectful guy that it's so interesting to see them being kind of malicious to one another right now. Yeah. Throwing those jabs, but those verbal jabs. These are both very respectful guys normally. They don't typically get dragged into this kind of beef, if you will. But both are partaking in it. And honestly, I think it's making it more clear this is the fight to make, right?
This is the fight. We've called for it for months, even before the title fight for Chandler, and now even more so since he lost. This is the fight. Ooh, the stylistic clash in this one. This is violence all day long. A main event slot on a fight night. Oh, my goodness. Give it all to me. Hopefully by the end of the year.
It's so interesting, though, that we say that. We say, because they're adding fuel to the fire, as the headline says there. So they're kind of increasing our interest in the fight by going back and forth like this. However, what they're going back and forth on is that neither one of them wants to accept the fight, apparently.
Which I'm true.
Which I'm not saying is false. I don't know what story is there. I did hear an interesting story from, who was it? I want to say it was either Luke Thomas or Chael Sonnen, actually. And
I watched Chael talk about this today. It might be.
So I heard an interesting story about potentially how Justin Gaethje and Islam Makhachev are under the same manager, Ali Abdelaziz.
Oh, right.
So because of that, whether we like it or not, whether we realize it or not, a lot of times if you're under a guy like Ali who is managing so many fighters now, you're not necessarily on a team, but
you are kind of
in a sense. In a sense, there is a bit of that. You try to work around having to fight one another, maybe, or something. I don't know.
Unless it's for like a belt, like Habib and Justin, then obviously.
Sure. So apparently, I think this was Chael Sonnen talking about this, and the idea was that like maybe Ali is telling Justin to like hold off on accepting that fight because they're hoping that maybe Islam Makhachev will get that fight
with Chandler.
Because there's a better chance for Justin to get really anybody in the top 5 while Islam is being so kind of trying to be kind of pushed to the side by a lot of these top contenders.
Yeah.
So that was what I read or what listened to. I think it was Chael Sonnen. I don't remember, but I thought that was an interesting idea. I don't really know how much we want to go into that. I don't know the validity of that statement, but I want to see this fight be made. And, it's just unfortunate that ultimately what's kind of adding to our excitement for it now that they're actually publicly going at it is the fact that they're going at it for the fact that the other guy they're saying won't take the fight.
Someone's right and someone's wrong.
Is this gonna blow over and we eventually get these two in the octagon, Dom, by the end of the year, you think? Or do you think that this fight's just kind of doomed and they'll never get on the same page and we might not see this fight ever, or at least not for a lot longer than we hope?
It really does make you wonder, like, why is it so difficult to make this matchup? You got to think at those Tuesday afternoon meetings that Dana always talks about with the matchmakers, this has got to be circled on the board. I mean, like, this is the fight. It's so perfect in all assets of this division and everything makes sense. I surely hope that they can come together, whether it's contract disputes or whatever the issues may be, get this fight signed, get this fight booked, and potentially, again, main event a card by the end of the year or a co-main on a big title fight card or something. But this is a fight that I don't even want to happen at this point. I need this fight to happen as an MMA fan, as many others feel. It just makes so much sense. It almost makes too much sense to make the fight. So hopefully it gets done, man. And if it does, I'll be ready to talk about it.
Would you be upset if they had to pivot and go with a matchups of Justin Gaethje versus Beneil Dariush and then Michael Chandler versus Islam Makhachev? Because that's been the other proposed matchups.
Both of those are still incredible fight. But Dariush and Gaethje. Any fight with Gaethje is always going to be pretty exciting. But when you match it with a guy like Dariush, that is a super compelling matchup. Makhachev versus Chandler. Yeah, they're both great fights. But none make me feel like Gaethje versus Chandler make me feel. Let's do Gaethje, Chandler, Beneil, and Islam then, or something. Man.
Yeah, I mean, I that's kind of where my head's at. That's the two matchups I want to see. But I don't know if I'm quite at your level, where it's like this is the fight to make. More so, just I try to reserve some of those I don't want to say you're putting expectations on this fight, but I'm saying I try to reserve some of that because you just never know how these fights will go.
I don't want to get my hopes up too high.
Yeah, I try not to get my hopes up a little too high just because we haven't even got the fight booked yet.
Yeah.
So I think once the fight's booked, I think a lot of times I've confused that in the past. This is a weird tangent to go on, but I'm gonna run with it. In the past I've talked about like when Dustin versus Conor 2 happened. And afterwards, we talked about the idea of the trilogy bout happening right away, and I said I have no interest in it. But then once the fight got booked and it kind of got a little closer, I was like, you know what? I was like, I think I'm into this fight. Same with Jorge Masvidal getting rebooked immediatally for another title fight with Kamaru Usman.
I definitely agree there.
While I don't agree with the fight occurring, I still got really excited for it once it got closer to fight night.
Yeah.
So I think in the past I've just confused that with the disinterest in these fights when really it's just I'm trying to reserve some of my excitement for when we actually get the announcement rather than right now this is all just chatter.
Right. That's fair.
That's going to wrap it up for kind of some of the news talk. We're going to transition in to UFC Vegas 32.
Oh, boy.
Correct? 32?
Yes, this is true, yes.
Yeah, so we start with our 5-round main event in the men's bantamweight division. Number 2, Cory Sandhagen, going up against technically unranked TJ Dillashaw, but we all know, and for those of you that don't, I'm going to tell you right now, the story for TJ Dillashaw coming in here. TJ, the former 2-time men's bantamweight champion, never lost the belt in his previous
second
time
title
holding
run,
it.
did not lose the belt.
Did not lose the belt, but he did attempt to go down in weight and become a champ on the very first ESPN card in a bout with Henry Cejudo, a fight that he would unfortunately lose in less than a minute. Afterwards, he tests positive for EPO. For those of you that don't know what EPO is, that's what Lance Armstrong took, so take with that what you will. Because of that, TJ relinquished his bantamweight belt and got a 2-year suspension. So this is his first time back coming off of that suspension. He got off of it back in January. So I'm seeing him now here in July. And I put the headline here, redemption or confirmation. And I'm going to explain kind of what my thought process is here. Because my story, the reason the fight was at its core, let's get stylistically, I'm not even talking about it yet. Just
the
in terms of storyline, you got redemption for TJ Dillashaw. This is a guy who, even when he patent tested positive for EPO, when he was a champion, he was respected, but not well liked. He's never really been a very well liked.
He's a villain, quote unquote.
Yeah, I guess. I mean, I don't know. Even I just think that he's not necessarily been a guy that's cared what the fans think about him. He's been kind of himself, and a lot of times fans haven't really enjoyed that. He does come across as kind of cocky and stuff like that sometimes.
He's like a Luke Rockhold type persona.
But now that he has tested positive for EPO and got the 2-year suspension, now the fans don't even respect him anymore. Now it's, well, he was only that good because he was taking steroids and whatnot, which I think we both can agree is kind of stupid to say that. But I understand that people are just angry and they speak kind of out of line like that. So this is redemption for TJ Dillashaw to not only prove – I'm not sure if he's ever going to be able to win back the fans that never really were on his side to begin with. I think that's kind of a ship that sailed, and I think he recognizes that. But redemption in the sense of proving to the doubters that talent is the reason why he was a 2-time bantamweight champion, and that no other while that other stuff sure helped him, probably isn't the reason why he was a champion to begin with. It might have even been a champion without it regardless.
Right.
On the other end, I put confirmation. And a more simple one here for Cory Sandhagen. We thought he was kind of the rightful next man up. Unfortunately, Aljamain Sterling and Petr Yan kind of have unfinished business from their bout back in March. So this is more for him just to confirm what we already believe about Cory Sandhagen, is that he's a rightful contender, rightful number 1 contender in this bantamweight division, and potentially a future champion, which has been kind of the weight he's had to bear on his shoulders from day one. So, Dominic, with that being said, with the storyline being set up here, now let's kind of get stylistically. Why do you find this fight so intriguing, and where do you see it kind of going once that door closes on Saturday?
It's so intriguing just because Cory Sandhagen is such a puzzle, a Swiss Army knife, if you will, in terms of a mixed martial artist. And another piece of the storyline before we get too deep into the styles and we can't dig ourselves out. These guys have trained together in the past before as well. Yep. TJ Dillashaw brought in Sandhagen to mirror Dominic Cruz when he was training to fight him. So if that tells you anything about the movement and the style that Cory Sandhagen has, that's how good this kid really is. And Sandhagen, well-rounded as they come, great grappling, great jiu-jitsu. On the feet, he's fantastic. His movement is second to none, really only to Dominic Cruz. And I think it's even more different. They're similar, but also different the way they move about the octagon. And Cory's so much different from Dominic Cruz because of his length and his long limbs. And you saw what he did to Frankie Edgar in his last fight with the flying knee. And then the knockout before that, a spinning wheel kick over Marlon Moraes. I mean, this guy has all the tools in the tool belt to finish this fight on the feet, on the ground, go the distance for 25 minutes. He really is that good. And for Dillashaw, he's really solid all across the board as well. I mean, he's a great stand-up fighter, has a great grappling, used to be with Team Alpha Male, and they're known for how great their wrestling is over there, their credentials. He's a former two-time champion. He's been on The Ultimate Fighter before as a semifinalist. These guys are two of the most well-rounded fighters that you can match up against one another in all of the UFC, and especially in this absolutely stacked 135-pound division. Both guys can end the fight at any point, anywhere, and it's just adds even more to it when you know a title fight is probably next, no matter who wins this fight. But the storyline to which that could play out is completely different. And so this is why the fans have wanted this fight for so long. It got delayed once. Hope to goodness it stays through for 48 more hours and we see it Saturday night, because I think no matter who wins, this fight is going to be nonstop from start to finish. And it's just such a great stylistic clash between two fantastic 135-pounders, man.
Yeah, great addition there at the beginning about the training partners. I forgot about that note. Yeah, this fight is fantastic, as we've said. And for me, what's so interesting about this is Cory Sandhagen should be the favorite coming in here. We know that he's the guy that's been active over these last couple of years. Really, his rise has been when TJ fell.
Yeah.
You know, when you look at them being training partners, I mean, that was when TJ Dillashaw was a champion. Cory Sandhagen was fighting for LFA at the time.
Right.
So they've come a long way since then. But in a lot of ways, it's more Sandhagen's came a long way since then.
Yep.
And while TJ is kind of in a more downer place than he was at that time. However, in getting into this matchup, Sandhagen has shown one glaring weakness in his game, and that was his wrestling in the Aljamain Sterling fight.
Right.
We know TJ Dillashaw has great wrestling. So there is a clear route to victory for TJ Dillashaw, and I still think that he even can hold his own on the feet in a matchup with Sandhagen. If anybody can do it, I really think TJ can.
Yeah.
His output is very much what wins him a lot of his fights.
And he's so quick and fast.
Yes, agreed. However, something I have to consider here is what TJ Dillashaw tested positive for was a substance EPO, which is known for really where it would benefit you is in your ability to throw more endurance, your ability to throw more. Like, that's where it benefits a guy like that. So I'm just going to be interested to see, like, do we see that same fighter? While I definitely disagree with any sentiment that TJ Dillashaw was somehow a champion or somehow this otherworldly better fighter because of EPO, I still think it's worth talking about. Like, is his style going to be a lot different coming in here? Because even if it's a mental thing for him, which I have to assume part of that was the reason why he took EPO in the first place. He was already damn good.
Yeah.
Just to be clear, the guy did not test positive in any fight before that. They retroactively went back and tested his samples for Cody Garbrandt fights and Dominic Cruz fights, all that. He never tested.
It was only the Cejudo fight.
I'm not saying that it's the only fight he used it in. I get it. Is it? Who knows, Brett? Maybe not. But this is a guy that clearly just thought he needed another advantage to try to keep himself above the rest of the competition. That's a mental game, man.
Yeah.
So now that he doesn't have that, mentally, where is he? You know, and he's got a 2-year layoff coming in here against a killer in Cory Sandhagen, who in some ways is going to be familiar with TJ's game because they were so, closely quartered with one another during the training sessions. That's where I'll be very interested to see how this fight goes. And I'm going to go so far as to say, Dom, that whoever wins this fight, I think we're going to know very early in the fight
who it's going to be.
Based on whether it's a first-round finish or if this fight goes 5 rounds. I think it's going to be, I don't want to say like a domination or anything like that, but much like in a fight, you think of a fight like Rob Font and Cody Garbrandt. It was very clear early on in that fight that Rob Font just looked like he was going to win that bout. Yeah. Sure, can things happen? Yes, but I think we're going to know very early on who's going to be the clear winner, who has the clear advantage in this matchup. Right. And I think that'll hold true for the remainder of the fight. So that's what I'm looking forward to, is who's going to win that round 1. And because in my eyes, that's going to be likely who takes it the rest of the way.
Yeah, and I want to see how the size difference is going to be in there too, because Sandhagen's so big for a bantamweight. He's 5'11". He's going to have like a 4-inch or 3.5-inch reach advantage. TJ has been in there with some of the best in the world, obviously, but never quite someone as lanky and long as Cory Sandhagen, and he's so good at managing his length and utilizing it to his strength. So I'm very curious to see how the range fighting will be in terms of, the clinch, the dirty boxing, and then, of course, the distance strikes. It's going to be very exciting. Can TJ get in there and close that distance? Can he get the takedowns? If he does, has Sandhagen improved his game to where he can get up? Can he threaten with submissions from the back? Will Sandhagen threaten takedowns with Dillashaw? There really are just so many question marks because they're both so damn good everywhere, man.
Yeah, we say that. I mean, do we really know if Cory Sandhagen's good on the ground? I
feel as offensively, yes, but he's going to have to be very defensively sound against a guy like Dillashaw's the problem.
I agree.
I don't think Sandhagen's coming in with a wrestle-heavy approach in terms of offense. He's going to want to stay on the feet with Dillashaw.
Well, I guess what I mean, Mike, and I'm not meaning this to like put you on the spot. I just mean more for us to talk about, like, we're saying how well-rounded these two are. And I definitely think for TJ that's been proven. I mean, the guy's had more time to do it. He's been a 2-time champion. He's proven that he can get the fight done anywhere and everywhere.
Right.
But we keep going back to the one loss for Sandhagen in that Sterling fight, and the wrestling is really where he failed there. Mm-hmm. And I get it. Sterling is very good in that aspect. But Sandhagen didn't really look that competitive in that fight.
Yeah.
But we know how good he's looked outside of that, but it's mostly been due to his striking, which is next level. So Dillashaw, if he's able to close that distance, I don't know how well-rounded Sandhagen really is. I guess that's a good question. Mm. Sterling's been the only guy that's been able to close that distance, got to figure out that puzzle to get in close
and we saw what
take him down. And it was a very one-sided, quick fight.
Yeah.
Obviously, Cory coming off of that loss said that kind of awoken something in him, and he's really been able to make a lot of improvements. So we'll just have to see. But I honestly think at this point I'm refraining from necessarily calling Cory Sandhagen a well-rounded fighter. I think he's an elite fighter. I think he's a fantastic fighter, a future champion. I even have called him on this podcast. But I don't think it's
need to see a little more.
He's a bit of a bantamweight Israel Adesanya in my eyes right now. Like, he's an elite fighter, but it's going to be because he gets it done his way and is able to stop you from taking the fight to where you want to get it done.
I like that. I like it.
Moving on, a little lower on the main card, we'll get to the co-main event, but it's going to be a little bit later. Right. These are the fights that we're focusing on for our headlines. The women's fight in question is going to be number 13 ranked Miranda Maverick and number 14 ranked Maycee Barber, happening in the women's strawweight division. This is clearly the two best women's prospects in this division. The two best, two biggest, whatever you want to call it.
And this almost in all of the women's divisions.
Probably. I mean, this is the most loaded division in the UFC for the women. So it would make sense that would be the case. Now, with that being said, I think coming in here, a lot of people are overlooking Maycee Barber's chances, and that's mostly because of where these girls are at recently. I mean, Miranda Maverick, I believe, has only fought UFC twice.
Yeah.
She's looked really good, and obviously she looked good before she came into the UFC. She's a very well-rounded fighter, I would say, but tends to take that fight to the ground and dominate it that way. Maycee Barber has been in the UFC longer, but is on a 2-fight losing streak right now.
Right.
And the Roxanne Modafferi fight's a weird one because she was highly favored to win that fight. Kind of got dominated, but also tore her ACL first round. But still, Roxanne clearly was winning that fight before the ACL tour. Regardless, she got dominated in that fight. Comes back and had a good showing, but
back and forth.
Yeah, who was her? What was her?
It was Alexa Grasso.
Yes, Alexa Grasso in that UFC 258 main card. It was the co-main event.
Co-main event. Yeah.
It was back and forth, but that was another fight where I felt like Alexa Grasso was winning the whole time.
Right.
That's how it felt to me watching it. So she has a lot of ground to make up because of that. Because she was throwing out a lot of big claims, saying that she
wanted to be the youngest champ. Yeah.
Yes, and now she has a chance to bounce back here, but it's against essentially another version of herself in Miranda Maverick, another girl in a similar spot as her. And it's a tough way to kind of come in here and look for a bounce back win.
Yeah.
How do you see this going? And if Maycee Barber loses this fight, what does that mean for her future prospects?
Yeah, I mean, stylistically, this fight, both of these women are so aggressive and love to push their opponent and make it their pace of the fight. So when they meet in the middle, who's going to get the upper hand? And, of course, Miranda is a fantastic wrestler, a great grappler. She showed that against Jillian Robertson, who's a jiu-jitsu ace and submits everybody. But Miranda was able to defend off all submissions, threaten with her own, dominated Jillian on the ground and even on the feet, has shown her improvement fight by fight. Her first UFC fight was a back-and-forth stand-up war, looked way safer, more comfortable against Robertson. And then for Maycee, she's someone that just wants to stand and bang, but at the same time can get you in that clinch, hit with nasty elbows, great dirty boxing. So, again, it's just two people that are so aggressive. Someone's going to have to get the upper advantage, or the upper hand, I should say. Miranda's so physically strong, but I will say, from what I've seen with Maycee Barber, she looks physically leaner than she has in the past. So it's very interesting how their physiques will come into play, the physical strength of one another. I think it's going to be really nonstop just because they've never shown anything other than that, than meeting in the middle and putting the pressure toward their opponent. So I do think it's a great stylistic fight. It's very important for each one of them to crack into the top 10. Your second question in terms of if Maycee loses, that's a very, very interesting question because, again, someone that came into the UFC undefeated, was at the time the youngest fighter on the whole roster, performed on the Contender Series and earned her contract that way, still only 23 and Maverick's 24, which is just crazy. They're like that new wave of MMA athletes. But for Barber, has a big following, but at the same time, a lot of haters. And I think that's because of her confidence that she's always carried with her. I've always been more on the positive side of it because I've seen she showed how good she is in the octagon. So this is very important for her because if she does lose here through a 3-fight skid, granted they're all great opponents, all ranked, and I get that, but that hurts, especially at such a young age. Mentally, you got to think it really takes a toll as well. And of course, we know she's torn her ACL. So this is a humongous fight for her to bounce back and against another bull and Miranda Maverick. This is not easy for either woman just because of the motivation that both of them carry into this one.
Where I think this matchup is when I get down to the skill sets of these women, and this doesn't bode well, I guess, in my estimation for Maycee based on what I'm about to say. Miranda Maverick seems very solid in kind of her skill set. Her grappling seems like it's very much at a very good level. Maybe her stand-up probably needs a lot of work, but just that, having that base that she has, she's very good in that aspect right now. While Maycee feels like she has a lot of raw intangibles, a lot of raw skill, but hasn't quite been able to really develop that skill set. Mm-hmm. I mean, we sit here and say yeah, she has some good wins. She's looked good on the feet. She's looked good in her grappling, but she's also gotten outclassed in both sides of that and her losses. So is that just a measure of maybe being pushed a little too much too soon? Maybe, but she's not being, obviously she got dominated in one loss, but Alexa Grasso fight, she didn't get dominated, but just, and Alexa Grasso is a very high-level striker.
Yeah.
It's just, I don't know. I feel like it's a dangerous fight for her when she's going up against someone who's so solid
I agree
in that aspect. Because if Miranda gets this fight to the ground, I just think it's going to be a long night for Maycee Barber.
Mm-hmm.
But if the fight stays on the feet, we don't really know what Miranda Maverick's striking has looked like too much, at least from what I can remember.
Right.
So I guess I would give Maycee the advantage there just off of her power alone. And
yeah. When she hurts people, man, she just bull rushes.
So that's really does add a wrinkle to this fight. I think that definitely could come into play. There's a lot. Miranda Maverick has earned her stripes as like her potential. She's earned her prospect status and whatnot.
Yeah.
But she's still only 2-0 in the UFC.
Yes.
And it's not necessarily been to these really high level opponents. Well, she did beat Jillian Robertson, right?
They both had wins over her.
Jillian's good, but I think that the win here for whichever woman wins, then you're like, okay, they are for sure like someone we can push and really get behind, because I think that the ceiling's very high for the winner. Yeah. But for a loser, I'm gonna have a lot of questions about really where they go. I mean, I get it for Maycee, 3 losses in a row, and if I'm saying that question about Miranda Maverick off of 1 loss, that doesn't seem fair. But it's more so just like, are they being overhyped? Are they overrated almost at this point?
Mm-hmm.
That's where I think this fight has a lot at stake because of that.
And whoever loses, how they lose, I think is going to say a lot too in terms of the aftermath as well.
Mm-hmm. A little bit. This is actually a late add to our main card. Yeah. A fight. Shout out to MMA Twitter for this one. Adrian Yanez going up against Randy Costa. This was a fight. Look, we know these are 2 guys that have kind of came out of nowhere for a lot of people. We've been able to, at least for me, it was more Yanez. His last fight with Gustavo Lopez, I believe it was. He had a fantastic fight, fantastic performance. But I actually knew Yanez was very good at LFA. Randy Costa is the one that kind of came out of nowhere for me.
Yeah. And
I'm just really happy that this fight is getting its shine, because these are 2 very exciting prospects. But, and really in this fight, like, sure, we can say the obvious here where it's whoever wins, surely they're going to be, pushed, that surely it's to the moon for them, whoever wins this fight, But really, for me, these guys are going to come in here and both put on or look to put on great performances. They've been in so many firefights, dog fights. So it'll be interesting to see kind of who was able to hold up and withstand the punishment more.
Yeah.
But really, these guys are just looking for a stage to perform on. They've been buried on these prelims for a while now. I'm glad that they are getting their chance to shine on this main card.
Yeah.
And I think they're going to steal the show. I really do. And shout out to MMA Twitter for this one, because really, without MMA Twitter really hyping this fight up, this fight would have been on the prelims still. So, Dominic, I know you've been really excited for this fight along with literally
everyone.
So I'm curious kind of what your thoughts are for this one as we're going in, because obviously we expect a dogfight here. But is there a chance that one guy comes in there and kind of starches the other?
100%. 100%. Yeah. Also, don't forget Dr. Pepper versus Reese's Cup here as well. It adds even more intrigue to the battle. Adrian Yanez, big Dr. Pepper guy, and Randy Costa. Sorry, I'm speaking too quick. Loves his Reese's peanut butter cups, as do I got to say. I'm not a big pop drinker, but I do love Adrian Yanez. I think this is going to be an absolute barn burner. I mean, we're talking 2 guys that love to finish fights. Yanez, 10 out of 13. Randy Costa, I keep messing up his name. Costa is 6-1, but he's finished all 6, and all 6 of them are by knockout. And by the way, all 6 of them are in the first round. So I think this fight is going to be surely very violent for however long it may last. I think it could be over quick. I think it could be a 3-round war. I'm kind of going right in the middle, but I think it is going to be a fight of the night contender regardless. Two guys that are just going to come in. And yes, they like to get in firefights. They like to be in fun, exciting fights. But they're both very technically sound strikers at the same time. And we saw that out of Yanez, especially against Gustavo. Landed that one clean shot, put him away. Costa coming off 2 straight wins, both by knockout. So he's shown the power there, along with the precision. I can say one thing I feel very confident in. This fight may not take place on the ground for even a second unless someone gets hurt and they get finished on the ground. It's going to be a stand-up war. I'm so happy it is being added onto that main card. Rightfully so. 2 young guys, 27 years old, both prospects, but this is sure to deliver in all areas that fight fans want to see it. I can't wait for this.
See, that's why I asked that question to you, because this fight, for both these guys, we talking about how they're always in firefights. They're always in these very exciting bouts. But the reason why these bouts are exciting is because their opponents are able to just stay alive. Yeah. Let's be clear. These guys are both swinging the hammers in their bouts. You know, they're not necessarily in a lot of really close fights or anything like that. They are putting a beating on their opponents, and they're just able to kind of survive. And that's where the excitement comes in.
Yeah.
So now they're matched up against one another, and they've done a great job of kind of getting fans into, the hardcore fans excited for this bout. Like I said, Twitter's been a big thing for them. They're very respectful to one another, which is also, you love to see that. And I just can't wait to see it go down, because while is the winner necessarily guaranteed a top 15 next? Probably not. But you just feel like this is one of those fights that, to me, no matter who wins, who loses, I really feel like both guys have already won just because they've been able to win over those hardcore fans going in here. Now it's all about just, you got your stage, you're on the main card, you got kind of what you wanted, put on the show that you've always done previous.
Exactly. I can't wait.
Let's get into the rest of this card, because there's a lot more bouts to get into here.
Yeah.
We start with that co-main event. Number 3 ranked Aspen Ladd is back.
Finally.
When was the last time we saw her fight, Dom?
December of 2019, my friend.
That is over a year and a half. Getting dangerously close to that 2-year layoff. She's ranked number 3 at bantamweight. She's going up against number 9, Maycee Chiasson. Is that how you pronounce it?
Chiasson. Yeah, it's like she's from Louisiana, so it's like the French kind of deal.
Okay, so Maycee Chiasson. Obviously, a lot of the interest, the intrigue of this bout is more on Aspen Ladd, because really the girl is from day one has had the potential that, you know, she's a very young fighter. A lot of people have really given her a lot of expectations from day one. And for the most part, along the way, she kind of passed a lot of those tests, had a big stumble against Jermaine Durandamy, her first headliner. Jermaine, it was a controversial knockout loss. One where she probably wasn't quite out, but 16 seconds is all it took GDR to finish that fight. And then now she's been on a long layoff. While for Maycee Chiasson, though, I do not think that this is what I think the people are kind of estimating about this bout is that it's really just a chance for Aspen to kind of come in here and get a win and potentially be looking at a title shot next. But I don't think Maycee Chiasson is signed up for no bout like that. I think she's coming in here ready to make a name for herself and jump herself into top 5 with a win potentially.
Yeah, I mean, she's been on people's radars for a while, was on The Ultimate Fighter, but just not as much as Aspen Ladd because the push just hasn't been the same. But during, the layoff that Ladd's had, Maycee's been able to go on a 2-fight win streak now. She's coming off of a win against Marianne Renault. She's only lost 1 fight in her career, both of these women, 7-1 for Maycee, 9-1 for Aspen. So it's 2 incredible prospects, both super young as well. What's crazy, Aspen is still only 26 years old, and she's been out for almost 2 years. But she's 4-1 in the UFC. Maycee's 5-1. Really, it's such an incredible fight in terms of where they are in their careers, if it wasn't for Ladd coming off the injury and the long layoff. But stylistically too, Maycee's very big and very long. She's 5'11", super long reach, where Aspen's the shorter one, like 5'6", 5'7". So the range is going to be interesting because that's what she likes to do. Back her opponents up against the fence and use those long arms and legs. I'm talking for Maycee here, of course. And Aspen Ladd is always just a super aggressive fighter. She's finished 7 out of 9 fights, loves the knockout. So really it's the rangy, long striker versus the, the dirty boxing range for Aspen Ladd. I think it's a fun one. Should Aspen win, she probably does solidify that spot as the next title contender after Juliana. But for Maycee, if she comes in and, let's say, starches Aspen Ladd, she very well could put herself into title talks because it would be a 3-fight win streak, beating someone with all the hype that Aspen Ladd has. This is a very intriguing matchup that I feel like people are sleeping on, even though it is in the co-main event slot.
Well, I mean, I guess in a way we didn't give it a headline.
We didn't get its headline, but damn it, we're talking about it.
No, I get what you're saying. Yeah, for this fight, Aspen is a bit on the smaller side for bantamweight. While Maycee is very much the large, very big for bantamweight here. So that is kind of an intriguing equation here. Is Aspen, we know that she's going to be aggressive early. Can Maycee kind of keep that
storm?
Well, I don't even know if it's weathering the storm, but it's more so about, I guess, finding her range, finding that range early. Because I guess in a way, if she doesn't, then she's going to have to weather a storm because Aspen's going to be in her face. And I think once it gets up close, I think Aspen's going to have a bit of a power advantage.
Yeah.
But I like this fight. I think you would think that this is probably going to be 3 rounds on the feet, wouldn't you?
Yeah, I would have to imagine it plays out very much.
So then, if that's the case, then there's no doubt that this fight should be a bit exciting. It should be fun, and either woman kind of gets a win here, and they're potentially next up for a title shot. As crazy as that sounds,
yeah.
Do I necessarily think? Look, Aspen Ladd has looked very good, except when she's fought elite talent, in my opinion. I mean, the GDR fight is a glaring example of that, where she's an aggressive stand-up fighter. And yes, I know GDR is
world class.
Kickboxing, yes, world class. However, she got put down, and whether you or not you thought the fight should have been stopped right there, she still got put into loopy land for a good few seconds.
Yeah, and GDR is very similar to Maycee in terms of the long, rangy style too. So,
yeah, I don't know if Maycee quite carries the power like GDR.
Right.
So I don't know how much Aspen's going to be thinking of like having to respect her power, which could put her in danger. She could expose her chin a little bit, thinking, "Oh, Maycee can't hurt me the way GDR did," and Maycee might be able to hit her with the perfect shot. But I think you're just going to see Aspen really try to work to close that distance, get in her face. And Maycee's probably gonna. Maycee could be the type of fighter to welcome that, though. As much as I think Aspen might have the advantage in that range, Maycee might feel more comfortable. I don't know how comfortable she is if holding the outside and kind of keep, like I said, playing with that distance game. I don't know how comfortable she is with that. Maybe she would prefer a dogfight herself. That could be really fun.
That's true. It's true.
Also on this card, and my phone is up here, on this main card, Kyler Phillips is back.
This fight's sick, too.
And he's going up – he's number 14 ranked, by the way, at bantamweight. And he's going up against Raulian Paiva, who's the number 12 ranked flyweight.
Yeah.
Looks like he might be making a divisional switch here. This fight's intriguing, obviously, because you got a guy that's moving up a weight class in Raulian Paiva, which he definitely should. The guy missed weight, I believe, in his last bout. I think that fight got pulled because of his inability to make weight.
I'm pretty sure.
I don't remember what happened there, but Kyler Phillips has looked really good. He had a really close fight with Song Yadong back in March. Song Yadong being one of those top prospects, really young guys that people have been excited about. Kyler Phillips, in 2020 kind of came out of nowhere, had that win over Cameron Elsay. around October, I want to say, and then he got that win over Yadong. So he's kind of been moving along pretty quickly here.
Mm-hmm.
And going up against Paiva, who has been around for a little bit, fighting at flyweight, so, not as many people are kind of aware of who he is. But the guy's a dangerous jiu-jitsu fighter, one of those Brazilians. You know how dangerous they can be if this fight gets to the ground.
Yeah.
And that's kind of the question here, because Kyler Phillips, we know that the guy's very slick on the feet, has some great striking defense too that people don't talk about. And that's really what this fight is it's that kind of classic matchup. But I'm not entirely sure if both guys look at it that way. That's kind of a wrinkle in this, is much like what I talked about in the main event with last week with Makhachev and Moises, where we thought Moises had an advantage on the feet and that he would look to keep it there. But then in the pre-fight video, he said he thought his grappling was better and he was going to look to grapple with Makhachev, which obviously in hindsight wasn't the best decision to make. But I wonder if a guy like Raulian Paiva would say, no, I'm gonna box with a guy like Kyler Phillips, or if Kyler Phillips, if he gets taken down, is like, okay, I'm gonna look to welcome it, because these guys are so young still, probably working on all their aspects of MMA all the time, really trying to grow some of these other skill sets that maybe they think are a little behind what they're known for. So there is probably a part of them that wants to test those out,
Yeah, that's true. And I mean, both guys, like you said, they are young, 25 for Paiva, 26 for Kyler, but they're both on big win streaks too. I mean, Kyler's undefeated in the UFC at 3-0, but for Paiva, he started 0-2 in the UFC after he came off of the Contender Series Brazil, but he's rallied off 2 straight, including a KO over Mark De La Rosa. But like you said, the weight cut was a factor, played an issue. So I want to see how he looks up a weight class. I will say, too, just another note, Paiva is 20-3, but he's only finished 7 fights. But Kyler is 9-1, but he's finished 6 out of 9. So a finisher versus a guy that likes to go the distance. So you maybe think, if this goes the course of 3 rounds, maybe it does favor Paiva. We'll see how the weight will go for him. But, as we just saw in Kyler's last fight, he went the distance with Yadong in a fight that never let up. Those boys didn't stop swinging until the final bell, and he looked fine. Like he could go 2 more rounds.
That pace of play was intense.
Oh, yeah. So this fight is very intriguing. I think it could be one-sided for whoever the winner could be, kind of like how you compared the Dillashaw and Sandhagen one. I think I see that here, where, whoever gets the upper hand early will very well control the rest of the fight, whether it is a finish or goes the course of the 3 rounds.
Well said. On the prelims, this is actually the fight that outside of the top 3 we talked about on the headlines, this is my next fight that I'm
This is a banger.
For. They're calling him Puna Soriano, but I'm still going with Puna Hele.
I love that name so much.
And he's going up against Brendan Allen. Brendan Allen being the guy that we've kind of been hearing about for a while now. We've been talking about him for a while now. Another one of those prospects who has came along slowly but surely. Was probably coming along a little faster before. He's had a couple stumbles here in the last year and a half or so, but still a very good fighter. He's going up against Puna Hele Soriano, who's really bounced on the scene with a big win over what was that guy's name? Dusko Todorovic, yes. That's
or as you like to say, Sid from Toy Story.
Yes, exactly. In that bout, we had seen previously from Dusko, the guy looked incredible on the feet.
Yes.
But then he got starched by Puna in that fight. So we know the power for Soriano is going to be a factor here. But Brendan Allen is just a very crafty guy.
Yeah.
For being a prospect, he kind of fights like a veteran a lot of times. He
has
crafty.
A lot of fights.
Finds a lot of routes to victory that you wouldn't expect from him. I think he's a guy probably more inclined to take this fight to the ground, but I wonder if he'll be able to do so against a guy who physically looks much bigger in Soriano here.
Yeah, this is so intriguing because I feel like Puna Hele is going to have the huge power advantage. He's undefeated. He's finished 7 of those in the first round. So a guy that likes to get in and get out. But for Brendan, as you said, still so young, Puna is actually older than Allen, but Brandon Allen has 20 professional fights already. They're both contender series guys, which adds even more intrigue to this one. Brendan himself has finished 14 out of 16. 9 are submissions, and Noah mentioned how great of a grappler he is. This could be very interesting, whether it stays standing or on the feet. I would love to see Punahele get tested on the ground just to kind of see him face some adversity. But should it stay standing, it will be close. But I got to lean toward Punahele because that power is there. Whereas Brendan's going to have, the reach advantage and be able to kind of touch him up from a longer range. Puna can close that distance with his speed and power. There's so many X's and O's of this one. I love that it's another prospect fight, 2 guys that could become stars in the future. They're the bigger guys, the middleweights. We need, Nate, guys like them to kind of start filling this division. It's become not stale, but everyone in the top, it seems like they've already fought each other. The back half's a little dull, and then here come these 2 guys in Punahele and Brendan Allen. This is a fantastic fight.
Yeah, well said. Also for this fight, now I'm kind of forgetting what I was going to say.
You've got it.
I don't know if I do. I had it, and then once you were kind of wrapping up what you were saying, I was like, "Fuck, he's about to stop talking. I gotta get it." Let me talk a little bit more about it, and maybe it'll come.
It'll click. Yeah.
Yeah. So in this matchup, Soriano, to me, it feels like coming in here. Oh, I just thought of it. I don't even have to I don't have to bullshit you guys. I got it. Where you said you want to see Punahele tested more on the ground, that's kind of what you want to see him tested at. I actually want to see his cardio tested here.
Okay.
Since he is such a big guy, can he go the 15 minutes without, especially with quite the power he carries? He might be putting a lot into those shots. Brendan Allen, there's no doubt in my mind that guy can go 15 minutes and feel pretty good. So maybe for a guy like Brendan Allen, maybe that's the game you play here. You play the long game. And as a guy like Puna gets tired out, then maybe he's more susceptible to the shoot, or he might even shoot, and it's like, oh, you're a wrestler now.
Yeah.
And then you might be able to get a submission win. That's where I am wanting to see Soriano tested here, because he seems like the bigger wild card in this matchup. They're both prospects, but there's just less known about Soriano.
Yes.
While Brendan, we're very much clear of Brendan's skill set. It's more so just he needs to keep developing.
Yes, exactly.
One more fight, and then we're done here. That's a lot of fights.
This card's so good.
And this was a late edition, I'll admit. We weren't going to talk about this fight, but we just want to give it a little love here at the end. Mickey Gall is back. He's been bumped down to the prelims since we had Yanez and Costa put in. But he's going up against Jordan Williams. And now Jordan Williams is a good opponent, 9-4. Guys looked pretty good. But unfortunately for him, we're not going to really talk about him here because the story with Mickey Gall is very clear, very evident. This is a guy that was one of the big gets from Dana White looking for a fight.
Yep.
He comes in and welcomes CM Punk. That's right. Yes, you keep I see you keep being cheeky with that poster behind you. He welcomed CM Punk to the UFC. Mickey Gall himself was a 2-0 fighter himself, or
2-0, 3-0, yeah.
And CM Punk was obviously making his professional MMA debut. Mickey starches him at that UFC 203 card in Cleveland that me and Dom were at, along with a few of our buddies. And after that, Mickey was kind of on a big stage right there. That was a big, even though CM Punk we know is probably potentially the worst fighter to ever come through the UFC. It was still a celebrity, so it was like a big rub for a guy like Mickey Gall.
Yeah, pay-per-view main card.
Celebrity status, type deal, like for him to kind of build his brand. And unfortunately for him, and this is going to sound a bit dramatic, and maybe I'm going a bit too far here, but in my opinion, in hindsight, it might have been the worst thing for his development that he was kind of thrusted into that position. He was a young guy, but more so just it's so fresh into his professional debut.
Yeah.
He looked fantastic early on. He had a good skill set, a very lanky, tall fighter, very good on the ground, so which helps when you have those long limbs and things like that. However, he was going up against his first two opponents in the UFC. I forget who was the first opponent he fought.
It was Mike Jackson.
Mike Jackson and then CM Punk were both guys that came in without a professional MMA win. So his level of competition there was not very good. And then you've seen since he kind of gets a step up in competition, it gets beat down pretty good, and then he'll win against some of these lower level guys. So his losses to Randy Brown on UFC 217, he got dominated by Diego Sanchez and kind of Diego's last really good fight.
Yeah.
And then most recently he got beat by Mike Perry, who kind of embarrassingly for Mickey Gall only had his baby mama in his corner.
Yeah.
So, Mickey, this feels like we're kind of the guy's been stagnant really ever since that win.
I agree.
Back in 2016. He's been trading wins and losses. Well, actually, the win over Sage Northcutt.
That was a big prospect fight at the time, yeah.
But when you look back on it, neither of those guys have really amounted to anything.
Yeah, I mean, Sage's not even in the UFC anymore,
And it's not even about being in the UFC. At one, he got starched in his debut.
Had his face broken.
Haven't seen him since. So, to me, we're kind of what do you call it? We're treading the same water here. For Mickey, it's win one, lose one, win one, lose one. I wouldn't even really say that coming off that loss to Perry that this is Jordan Williams a good opponent, but it's not even for Mike Perry now, who's not looking quite like Mike Perry of old, still a step down. But if Mickey Gall gets a win here, which is necessary for him, what are you going to do? Are you going to give him a step up in competition again? And will he win that one? Who knows?
Right.
I don't know. I think the door is very close to being shut on Mickey Gall and his potential. And a loss here might be the final nail in the coffin, and he might be done, really.
Yeah, and it's crazy because off of that Dana White looking for a fight, there was so much hype behind the kid, and he had the big pay-per-view slot, albeit it was CM Punk, but there at one time felt there was so much potential for this kid, and ever since it's just like you said, kind of stagnated. And now I was going to ask you kind of already answered it, but it does feel like almost a must-win situation just for Mickey to keep his name in talks for future UFC bouts. But at one point where you're like, oh, this kid could be a contender one day or a ranked fighter, now you don't quite feel the same way about him. And yes, he is still quite young. He was only like 23, I think, during that UFC card in Cleveland. So still relatively young into his prime ages. But as you said, when it's so back and forth, you really have to come out and just win. But when you're stagnating, it's tough, man. So this is a huge fight for him. And obviously, I know we didn't talk about Jordan Williams as much, but should he come out and defeat Mickey, and especially if it's convincing, that at least would be the biggest win of his young career. So
that's a good point. I will just say, to kind of add to the unfortunate, I don't mean that, we like Mickey Gall. We're not trying to
his entrance at UFC 203, one of my favorite of all.
We're not trying to be Debbie Downers here, but it's just, we're calling it like we see it, and this is ultimately how I see it. Mickey Gall is 29 years old now, and he is no closer to reaching his potential than he was that night that he beat CM Punk.
That's a good way
UFC
to put
203.
Yeah.
It's just unfortunate because then he gets matched up with Sage Northcutt. We thought that was a big prospect fight, and then neither guy really amounts to anything.
Yeah.
So maybe it was just never really meant to be with Mickey, or maybe there's something else going on. Maybe he bought into his hype too much, whatever it could be. I don't know. I hope, I don't say this lightly because I tend, again, to be much of a middle ground in a lot of these fights. I just like to see good fights. But I'm rooting for Mickey Gall here for the sake of his career. I don't know if he would necessarily be cut with the loss, but I'm assuming he's getting paid decent money considering the the stage he was on early on with that CM Punk win and Sage Northcutt win. So the UFC might not really see a reason to keep him around, especially because he's being bumped to the prelims.
Right.
So really, he's not even being kept on main cards at this point. Must win for sure, in my opinion.
Well said.
That's going to wrap it up here. Went a lot longer than I even thought it was.
This card, though, man.
Oh, I mean, we gave it the respect it deserves, and
yeah.
I can't say anything less for that. That's going to wrap it up for our MMA Weekend Preview. Let us know your thoughts on these fights and the news stories we talked about. Give us your predictions. Next week will be a 2-episode week, so we'll obviously have a recap on Monday, then another preview on Friday for the biggest card that weekend, Bellator 263, in my opinion.
Yes. The title fight.
Yes, for sure. But we'll get into that then. Dominic, until then, tell the good people where they can find you on social media.
Find me on Twitter, on Instagram, at DSlee14. More importantly, follow us, interact with us, engage with us. Find the podcast on Twitter, on Instagram, at BAJ_, don't forget the underscore, MMA podcast.
Yep. For me, you can find me on Twitter or Instagram at ntbaker_. My bio on both of those has a link to the link tree. You click on that, and you can see all the platforms the podcast is on, along with social media platforms, Twitter, Instagram, YouTube channel, Spotify, Google, and Apple Podcasts all on there, along with a couple links for today's sponsor, Anchor. Shout out to Anchor. Leaving a voice message and becoming a supporter of the podcast. Those are all links on there, so check those out. But that's it. We're out. And we're going to see y'all on Monday.